If you were to walk from the house to the burn pile, are you going downhill or uphill?
You are going downhill, a slight downhill angle.
Then aerial 17. You got the doors on the left, the ones I'm calling the American doors, to the right, the French doors, and then as this keeps turning to the right, the burn pile would be back down that way. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
What did you know you were looking at, or what y'all were dealing with when you first arrived? I know it changes at some point, but when you first get there, what's going on?
So when I walk up to what we called the pile, we have this burn pit. I can still feel heat radiating off of it, and I can see what appears to be a set of skeletal remains sitting on top of this pile. There appears to be construction debris and all this other miscellaneous garbage in this pile, but it's very clear to me that I was looking at a set of skeletal remains on the left side. I immediately got everybody to back out and then started to request additional assets as I'm starting to size up my scene and determine how I'm going to try and recover these remains in a forensic manner.
When you were first called out, were you respond to a person in need of help, or what was the call?
It's a death investigation that they were not sure of what they had.
When you get out there, do you remember the temperature of the taken from the burn pile when you got out there?
I know it was initially warm off me, so one of the things that I did request was have one of the fire investigators someone come out with thermal to give me a temperature. When they were finally able to get out there, it was still over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, with daylight still up at that time.
So still hot?
Still hot.
You back everybody out, then what happens from there?
I requested through my chain of command to contact the GBI and the forensic anthropologist, Dr. Alice Gooding, to get her to come out and assist us with recovering this set of skeletal remains.
And why did you call Dr. Gooding? What was about her that made you call her?
Well, one, she's the state forensic anthropologist. This is definitely well inside her wheelhouse. And two, I'd never done this outside of a training environment. I did not know what I had. I know I had a set of skeletal remains on a pile. It was radiating heat at over 200 degrees. I don't know how this person got there and how they got to the state. And I'm not so far in my ego to go, I can do this on my own without calling experts who I know are going to, one, help teach me how to properly document this, but to ensure that we properly document and collect this entire set of remains. And for me, that's important because that person has a family. I want to make sure we're doing our absolute best to ensure that we do this correct, because we only have one chance to do this. And so if I can call help, and that help is here in our state, I'm going to use it.
Had you ever had a crime scene like this before?
I'd never worked a crime scene like this. I have burned 2 self-immolations in my career, and that is suicide by fire. I have worked those, but never one to this scope where I have both fire and skeletonized remains in an area that I know I need to properly document and recover.
Did you know of Dr. Gooding, a reputation or anything, or what was it about her that made you know that she does this type of stuff?
So through our crime scene community, we knew that Dr. Gooding, one, was in charge of the crime scene work at KSU. She's the lead instructor down there. She has been going in with the Georgia Public Safety Training Center and starting to teach similar classes that students would get at the NFA here at the local level for our local crime scene investigators. And a lot of the classes that she had been teaching and that we had been pushing are scattered recovery remains and what we call buried recovery remains. She was able to teach those classes at the Georgia Public Safety Training Center down in Monroe County. She was coming to a lot of our I had heard her speak at the Georgia IAI conferences because I'm a member of that. And so that's where I started to learn what her mission, what her outlook was. And she said, anytime you need us, call. We all had her number. She made it known that we could call her for a consult. And if we needed help doing a recovery, because she was the state's forensic anthropologist, we could call her. And I did.
And did she come?
She did.
What is she like? What's her personality like?
She's an educator, but she's awesome. She did bring one of her master's candidate students, and she was very nice to ask permission before allowing that master's candidate student into the scene. They are all vetted through her program, so that person is documented in my report. But she shows up with all her gear ready to go. And so I actually had to tell her, okay, hold on. I got to lay some groundworks for what we're doing because it's still our case. But I did call her for help. But she is super outgoing. She's very easy to talk to. And she started explaining stuff to myself and my lieutenant again, and it started to come back to us as we're laying certain lines to start setting up our recovery. But ultimately, because she's the state forensic anthropologist, I let her take lead on that. That's her purview, because she's also going to catalog those remains. She's going to make sure we document the complete skeleton, and she's going to make her notes because she's going to produce a report for us too, because this is a police investigation.
Growing up, I like to watch things like Indiana Jones, and when they would go to a site and they would be systematic and have little brushes, little picks, and things like that. How would you describe Dr. Gooding's system as she would get in and start doing stuff? What was that like?
Exactly the way I was taught at the National Forensics Academy, because she helped teach up there, and that we do use brushes. What you do see in that is actually real. Had this been a buried, we would have had a 5-gallon bucket. It would have taken several hours to do this, but we have our lines laid and everything's broken down into grids, and we don't move from one grid to another until she says it's clear and she's got her catalog going. And so it's very systematic. It's fast, but it's slow, where we can make sure we're accurately documenting everything.
She would take the burn pit. Did she divide it into 4 quadrants or 4 sections?
Yes.
And how would you rope it off, or what were we going to see in the photographs?
So what we do is we start to lay what we call a datum line. That's our north-south line. So you're going to see orange string, and you're going to see it broken into quadrants, and you're going to see arrows indicating north. And what we're doing is we're trying to express in 2 dimensions something that is 3-dimensional. So when we attack a scene like this, we're looking at it on 3 axes. We're looking at it from length, from width, but we also want to show height and depth. That way we can explain how far down certain remains are. And it's more defined when we're actually in a vault recovering from the ground. But we still do it on a scattered, because we want to show how far or how close something is in relation to the central mass, if you will. So if we have a large mass in the center, we're going to say that's the center, and then we're going to measure out and say our furthest point is 6 feet down and 8 feet across. And if I can show you that in 3 dimensions on a picture, it makes it easier than just reading off numbers. And so that's why we lay these lines. We also split it into quadrants to make it easier for us to tackle a large scene so that we don't forget anything.
What kind of tools or things did you use to do this? Did she bring anything?
She brought all her tools, but sifters, buckets, garden trowel, stuff you would find in the gardening center of any Home Depot, Lowe's, or Walmart. That's what we use. Now they're all clean and sterile, and she brings them with her. But it's common tools that you would recognize, except for our sifter. Our sifter is waist level. Each forensics expert builds theirs to meet their needs.
Let's look at some of these photographs here. I'm going to tender into evidence. It's Shaw 1 through 281. And investigator, did you have an opportunity to meet with us and go through all these pictures and the videos and everything?
Yes, sir.
And were they fair and accurate photographs of what was done at the scene and other things in this case?
Yes, sir.
So Judge, at this time, I intend the evidence states exhibits, but it's Shaw 1 through Shaw 281.
All right. Objection? No. All right. You're admitted.
I'll give you these just in case you need them, but it should pop up on the screen. Judge, may we turn down the lights a little bit for these? Would that be okay? All right. We're going to walk through some photographs. I may call them States 1 or Shaw 1 or 1, but all these photographs are going to have your name and a number. So Shaw 1, what do we have here?
So with this first series of photographs, all I'm doing is taking overall photographs outside of the crime scene tape.
As you look at 1, as you look at the photograph, there's a pine tree to the right, then is that the beginning of the burn pile?
So this oak right here, that is
Okay.
is directly in front of the left side of the pile, and then that pile extends from that tree over to the right.
This is 2. We'll be moving to the right. 3, 4. Now this stage, there's no really markings or anything. What is this? How early on is this in the processing the scene?
I'm waiting for Dr. Gooding to arrive, but I'm still taking pictures, trying to do something to be ahead so that when she arrives, we can tackle the next task.
But you didn't dive into the pile and start doing anything until she arrived
No, sir.
on the scene. 5, 6. And was there anything with the pile itself when you first got there that you noticed and thought, here are some things of interest?
Other than the skeletal remains, I, for whatever reason, kept getting the smell of citronella, and I don't know why, and that's not a normal smell for me at a death investigation. I mean, I generally smell other smells related to the artifact of death, but I kept smelling citronella, and I was like, did I spill some when I was filling mine at my house? I don't know, but I just, every now and again as I walked around the pile, I could just smell that.
8, 9, just going back. Now, 13, this is looking from one side of the pile, and you said it was still hot to the touch. Was it on one side or certain parts of it that were that way?
So I didn't walk all the way around. When I got close to it, did what most was just stick my hand. I was like, that's still radiating some pretty good heat. And I own firefighter rated boots because I do sometimes have to go into arson scenes. And I wasn't willing to walk close to that in those boots. I was like, let me see what the actual temperature is. 1, I wanted it to be safe, and 2, I needed to document it because it was still radiating quite a bit of heat for this condition.
How can you compare that? How hot is that if it's over 200 degrees?
Well, we boil water at 212. We can get scalding burns, I believe, between 110 and 160. That's hot enough for me to go, I'm not willing to melt polyester to my skin, and I'm not willing to risk the firefighter rating of these boots. We get an expert out here, see what the temperature is, and see how long we need to wait before we can actually work.
Shaw 14, as I zoom in, what did you notice first when you got to the pile?
So this one, I'm on the left side, and I'm shooting over. I can see what appears to be part of a hand. At the time, what I think is a hand. I see what appears to be part of the rib cage, and I'm starting to orient myself. I see parts of different degrees of what I believe are temperature variations. So when we look at something, we say clothing initially blocks heat, it won't burn evenly. That's what I'm seeing in my head, and I'm trying to figure this out, but I see that it's compact too, and I'm like, okay, is this someone who's fallen over? Because I don't see what we would traditionally think of as a full skeleton of a human being. So did someone fall over? Did someone experience some sort of issue that caused them to fall here? All these are running through my head as I'm taking these pictures, trying to process this and think of next steps to go. How am I going to document this, and what am I going to look for?
And at this time, you didn't know anything about a bullet in the ribs or anything like that?
No, sir.
15, 16, 17, now we're getting on to 18. And who do we have in this picture and what's going on?
So these are the start of the forensic anthropology examination. So we're marking flags, and you start to see wooden stakes go down for our datum lines. And then we have master's candidate students and the deputy coroners in helping to rake and clear while we're taking pictures.
And as you look at the exhibit, Shaw 18, the photograph, I've got the cursor here. It appears that on the right side, there's an angle or it slopes down or goes downhill to the left. Is that right?
Yes.
Is kind of showing that angle, that downhill looking up. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, on the outside of the fire pit, there appears to be is that wood and things that are charred but not burned.
Yes.
Maybe some vegetation.
Correct.
We start to get markers. Now the A, I know that's going to be renumbered at some point, but what are we doing here in 24? What's this showing?
We are starting to build our quadrants. So we're laying down our north-south line and our east-west. We're also, we have angle indicators on those lines so that if we need to run a tape measure across at one point, we can see what that angle is at that measurement point. So we run the lines and then run the tape. We have our 4 quadrants, but the lines aren't completely square, and we keep it within our boundaries of where we see evidentiary goodies.
And we're going to get into this, but I believe quadrant, it goes top on the right side, A, B, C, D, kind of going in this direction, clockwise.
Yes, I believe we went clockwise that night.
And you see B in Shaw 30 photograph. And then there are some flags that are put down. Are those to indicate things that you just see on the top?
Items of evidence on the top.
Here shows the Shaw 32 shows the 4 quadrants.
Correct.
So if this is A, B, C, D, and most of the evidence, the remains were found in A and B. Is that
in A and B?
when you were there, did you look for any accelerants?
I did not.
Did you find any, happen to see gasoline cans or gasoline any, containers, anything like that?
I did not find any in the area of the pile.
Was there various items, different things, was wood, fencing, bottles, cans, trash, all kinds of different items in this fire pit?
There was, yes, sir.
Now we've got to Shaw 49. Give me Shaw 51. We're going to go into. Tell us again, how would you attack each to remove things and collect things? What would you actually do? Did you use a shovel, hands? What did you go down? How did you pick stuff up, and how did you sift through it?
So we start with our hands first. It's our most tactile sense. So we're going to start in our quadrant. Someone's writing down. We'll start with the large items that we can see and identify, and then from there we will start to grab shovels and trowels to pick up areas of ash and debris to go over to the sifter. And those will be transferred from a specific quadrant being documented by the scribe there, and then put in a bucket. From there, taken to the sifter. The sifter is placed over the blue tarps, something that will contrast with us, and then it's one bucket at a time. We'll sift it, look through the sifter, empty the tarp back into the bucket, check the sifter, make sure we don't have anything, catalog, document that, and then we just keep rinsing and repeating as we go through these buckets. So everything starts to slow down at that point once we've removed the big items that we can readily see and identify.
When you found an item of interest, what would you do with it? Was there
So
Dr. Gooding do lay it out, or what would she do?
There's laid out on tarps. However, Dr. Gooding wants to do that. Like I said at the beginning, she's kind of running that. I'm just making sure, one, I'm learning, and two, anything that she needs. But she's running that process. But she's laying stuff out on tarps. She's cataloging the skeletal remains as they're removed, checking on us. I get to do the manual labor. I was sifting some stuff. We're also continuing to rake and make sure that we don't miss anything within that specific quadrant. Once we're done with that quadrant, we move on.
And Shaw 55, we have these, you see the ground has markings like it. Was that how that was, or is that something y'all did?
That's from us raking.
Did you notice around the burn pile itself, was there any signs of raking or a tractor had been used or something to clear the land?
No, not around that, because the area on the edge of the burn pile was still green with vegetation.
But did you see that there was evidence that a tractor or RTV was in that area?
Not during this point of the investigation.
It says 57. What's going on here? Is this just an example
We're
of what?
examining small bone fragments.
58. What is just scooping buckets? Is that how that would work?
Yep, we're troweling using a dustpan. We're troweling into the bucket. Once we're satisfied with that, it goes to the sifter. We sift it. Again, we look for small bone fragments, items of evidence, pieces of clothing,